Hey everybody, Pastor Caleb here. Thanks so much for joining us live again tonight. Really looking forward to our time together. Tonight we're going to be concluding our series called Reset. We're going to have some music with my brother Isaac in just a few minutes, and we're just looking forward to connecting via Zoom later tonight as well. Thanks for joining us again. Hope you enjoy your time with us.
So let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Sing of His promises evermore, and pour out your thankfulness, and let it overflow. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. So let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Sing of His promises evermore, and pour out your thankfulness, and let it overflow. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Yeah. He led me out of the desert, brought me into His streams, river of living water, and turned my bitter into sweet, and all my burdens are lifted. Took these shackles off my feet. Oh, there's no sound louder than the captain set free. So let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Sing of His promises evermore, and pour out your thankfulness, and let it overflow. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. There is joy in the morning, springing up in my soul. There is life worth living, 'cause He calls me His own. And there's a hallelujah after sweet victory. Oh, there's no sound louder than the captain set free. Oh, there's no sound louder than the captain set free. So let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Sing of His promises evermore. Pour out your thankfulness, and let it overflow. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. You are my deliverer, the freedom I'm living in. You are my deliverer, you are my promised land. You are my deliverer, the freedom I'm living in. You are my deliverer, you are my promised land. You are my deliverer, the freedom I'm living in. You are my deliverer,
Oh man, I haven't played Mario Kart in forever. This is so fun. Oh, hey Brayden, don't pull on that honey. Let's go. Oh, I'm gonna beat you.
No, you're not. I played this so many times growing up. So many hours invested in this game. Oh man, I was just about to beat you in Mario Kart. He hit the game card and it froze.
Yeah, it's okay. We still love you, buddy.
We do. I guess we just need to hit the reset button and try again.
Yeah, it's okay.
Alright, hey, so tonight we're going to be finishing our series called Reset. This series focuses on disruptions that come into our lives and how we can respond to them. We've looked at the lives of various people in the Bible so far, and we've learned that through their lives that we can respond to disruptions in a way that honors God. A disruption is any circumstance that comes into our lives that changes our plans, and a lot of times what we find with disruptions is that we do not have control over them. And so we can't control the disruptions that come, but we can control how we respond to them. And so our hope is that when disruptions come to our lives, that we'll reset our focus and our priorities back on to God. Tonight we're going to end our series by talking once more about the life of Daniel, and what we're going to find is that he was willing to honor God and to worship Him even with the threat of being punished by death in the lion's den. And so just to give some thought with regard to disruptions, I know for me a lot of times when a disruption comes into my life, I want to get out of that situation as fast as I can. I can remember a few months ago, our house here, we lost Wi-Fi for about a day. Something happened locally that took out the coverage, and it was a really frustrating process, and it was kind of bogus to not have internet for that time. And I know for me, I just wanted to totally switch our internet provider. I just wanted to call it off that day, to cancel it, and just start over with something new. And the reality is with disruptions, sometimes we want to just quit and get out of the situation. What we're going to find in Daniel's story is that he was faced with some major consequences that would have made a lot of people consider quitting and getting away from serving God. And yet, in the midst of that, Daniel was committed to his walk with the Lord, and he honored Him even under threat of being killed. Just a little bit of review from Daniel's life. We know that he and his friends were taken out of their homeland of Judah, and they were conquered by the Babylonians. We are now fast forwarding to where the Persian Empire has come in and they have conquered the Babylonians. And it's amazing to see that Daniel has remained influential, and he has remained a really important piece to the authority and to the leadership of this empire, even throughout this major change. And what we know of Daniel is that God had given him the spirit-empowered ability to decipher dreams and what they meant. And so throughout all these disruptions in his life and all the disruptions of the people's lives around him, Daniel has somehow remained an influential character in the life of the governments that he was around. And what we find in our text today is that Daniel had gotten to the place where he was one of the top 3 officials to the king of Persia. And so he had oversight over governors and over all kinds of leadership in that entire empire. And he was so influential that the people who were in leadership wanted to get rid of him. And in Daniel chapter 6, verse 4, we find this about Daniel. It says, "Then the high officials and the satraps sought to find a ground for complaint against Daniel with regard to the kingdom. But they could find no ground for complaint or any fault, because he was faithful and no error or fault was found in him." And so these people who are jealous of his influence and of his leadership, they want to find a way to get rid of him, but they can't find anything to hang him on. They can't find any reason to call him out. And so what they do is they use his own worship, his own law against him. They know that Daniel was faithful to pray 3 times a day, and they devised this plan so that the king would put a law into place that would prohibit any expression of worship to anyone or anything else other than the king. And so this law is passed, the king is kind of tricked into making it a law, and what we find is that Daniel, even once the law is passed, Daniel continues 3 times a day to honor God and to continue his relationship with the Lord through prayer. So he's caught, and we know that Daniel is brought before the king, and the king has to follow the law that is set in motion. Daniel is put in the lion's den, and I find 2 things very interesting from our text tonight that I just want to briefly point out to us. The first thing is this: when we live for God in the midst of disruptions, other people will notice. So in verse 16, this is what it says. Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. The king declared to Daniel, "May your God whom you serve continually deliver you." And if you read in this text, you'll find that the king really didn't want to put Daniel in the lion's den. He liked Daniel. He didn't like that he'd been tricked, but once a law was made, it had to be followed through with. I think what's interesting, though, and what we find here, is that it's very evident that Daniel continually served the Lord. The king said so. So Daniel had lived a life up to this point where he lived for God and he honored God, and it was so evident that the people around him noticed it. And so it's a really simple but obvious point that when we're going through different things in life, when we're going through disruptions, they're not just affecting us, but they affect the people around us. People see how we respond. People see what we're going through. The second thing is this: when disruptions come, let's lean in and let's trust God. If you go further down in verse 23, this is what we find out about Daniel. So Daniel has been put in the lion's den. They put a big cover over the opening, and then they sealed it, and for one full night Daniel was in there with the lions. And this is what we find in verse 23 after this has happened. Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him, because he had trusted in God. And so miraculously, God had protected Daniel from being eaten by the lions. And once he was removed out of the lion's den, the king puts into motion a law that encourages the people to worship God. But what I want to focus on here for just a moment is that the text says that Daniel trusted in God. So here's the thing: I think Daniel trusted in God even if he wouldn't have been rescued from the lion's den. I think Daniel's desire to honor God and to worship Him was so fierce that even in the face of danger, he wanted to continue that relationship. And so when we are in situations that disrupt our lives and disrupt our way of thinking and living, let's be people who trust God. Let's be people who lean into God, because the reality is people around us are going to see what's happening, and we can point them to Him. A few takeaways are just two simple things. God is at work in the midst of our disruptions. Like I said earlier, typically we don't want to go through a disruption. We want to get over with it and we want to get out of it as fast as possible. But let's trust that God is at work even in those disruptions. And then secondly, when disruptions come, because they will, let's reset and let's put our trust and let's put our focus on God. The bottom line for tonight is this: trust God when disruptions come. Thanks for joining, and we'll look forward to getting into small groups in just a few moments.